The recording. Perfect. Welcome and good morning again. Welcome to our Manufacturing Leadership Council DC call on today, September 25th. Today we're going to talk with Cummins and Axion Ray about how Cummins is leveraging Axion to improve uptime for customers and warranty performance. Joining us are Justin Blomenberg, a Customer Experience Leader at Cummins, Daniel First, Founder and CEO at Axion, and Kevin Brittain, Digital AI Director at Cummins. And if I got your last names wrong, I apologize. And I'm Stephen Moskowitz from the MLC. Again, this is part of our Data Mastery and Governance and Analytics Decision Compass group. Throughout the year, we've talked about other topics, including data literacy, governance, architectures. We've had 2 calls this year. We have another call coming with Arch Systems and Jabil in 2 weeks on the 9th. That will be our last call of the year. Due to schedules, things have shifted around. But as a reminder, there will be more calls coming up in 2026. We're making some small changes to our Decision Compass groups. This has been posted on LinkedIn, and more information will be coming. We're making some slight shifts to what we call our critical issues and DC topics. AI has now been separated out as a separate topic from data mastery, governance, and interoperability. So you'll see even more conversations next year on AI and data as we kind of double up on these important topics. So look for more information on that and our DC calls as we go into next year. Before we start, a couple of quick reminders. We have a upcoming plant tour at Eclipse Automation in Cambridge, Ontario in October. And we have our Future of Manufacturing project event, in-person event in December in Orlando, Florida. We focused the last couple of years on the future of data, the future of AI-enabled, AI-centric manufacturing. And this year is the future of leadership and the importance of the future of leadership to really leverage AI and data. So with that said, I will now jump us on, and you could also see some more information on LinkedIn and our portal. With that, I will come back to the beginning, stop sharing, and welcome our speakers for today. So before we jump in and talk about the importance of the topic, let's do some introductions. Daniel, let's start with you. Kind of who are you and who's Axion?
Great. Daniel, I'm the founder at Axion. At Axion, our mission is to help manufacturers solve the top issues that are impacting their customers. Manufacturers across industries today are struggling with downtime, warranty costs, and other challenges on their strategic product launches when products fail in the hands of customers. And so Axion, we're a growth stage AI company specialized for manufacturers to detect, investigate, and countermeasure issues. And we support customers across industries like power systems, electronics, HVAC, aerospace, medical devices, and consumer.
Excellent. Thanks again for joining us. We'll go alphabetical. Justin.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Justin Blomenberg, and as Steve mentioned earlier, I am Customer Experience Leader for the Cummins Power Systems business. For those of you that may be not familiar with our business model, I'll just briefly explain it. Power Systems is basically any Cummins engine or genset that's in a piece of equipment bigger than a Class 8 over-the-road truck. And so if you think about some of the cool things we get to work on, including what's in, I guess, over this shoulder, 400-ton haul trucks that are moving material in some of the most demanding locations in the world across many different continents. We also work on marine applications, on rail applications, and then some specialized defense applications. So excited to be here and sharing a little bit of our journey with you all today.
Excellent. Kevin, let's finish it up.
Yeah, hey everybody, Kevin Brittain. I'm at Cummins with Justin in the same business unit as of Power Systems, and I lead our digital and AI group within Power Systems, and we're looking at applying a digital and AI layer across all of our different functions and major business processes, and this is one of those that we're going to highlight today. So thank you all.
Looking forward to the conversation. For folks on the call, if you have questions, you can pop them in the chat. We will kind of keep abreast of that throughout the call and have time at the end to really dive into any questions you have. So let's kind of start with the conversation. Justin, as you think about this, we talked about uptime, right? You see the truck behind you. Why is quality and uptime important, and is it becoming more important as you think, as you kind of look towards the future?
Absolutely. And yeah, it's a great question. I think there's a couple of aspects to that. One, if we think about the applications that we're used in, and we'll take that mining truck over my shoulder as an example. When that truck's not running, the customer's not making any money with that truck, right? And so we think about their business model as all about moving material and trying to get that material out of the ground. One of the main trends we're seeing right now in the industry is the fact that commodity prices are always under pressure. And so when you have pressure on commodities, there's always pressure on productivity at the mines. And one of the major issues that mines deal with is machine availability. Is the machine able to work when I need it to? And what we've seen is over the years, as the machines have become more complicated, there's more stuff that can go wrong, right? And so the more things that can go wrong, the more important it is to be able to quickly identify what's wrong, diagnose it quickly, and get the machine back up and running. I think the other important trend is that, as with any of us, our delighters today become the expectations of tomorrow. And so there's always this continuous improvement. If we've gotten to a point where the truck's available 97% of the time, we're going to now try to work on getting it available 98% of the time, right? So that's always something that's pushing us as well to continue to drive more productivity and more availability.
And so you think about that, you've been doing this obviously for a long time. You've had a lot of data coming in. These trucks have been around. At what point did you realize that your current systems, your current capabilities were not sufficient to get you that last 3%, right? To get you from where you are today to where they need to be in the future?
Right. Yeah. I think, probably, around 10 years or so, when we really started to get a lot of the data coming off of our electronic product, for example, we were taking that data, maybe an engineer would take a look at it, but most of that data would go get stored in what we were calling our data lake. And that data lake kept growing and growing and growing. And we realized that there was a point at which an engineer trying to put thousands of lines of data into an Excel spreadsheet and create pivot tables was just no longer efficient. And it quickly overcame our ability to process that data. And in fact, many times we would cause Excel to it would crash. We'd put so much into it, it couldn't even handle that. And we realized that we've got to do something different. We've got all of this great data about our product, but we can't do anything with it. It's just sitting on a server someplace, and so moving towards a new set of tools, including these AI tool sets, has allowed us to actually much more quickly handle that volume of data, but then also quickly get to insights about what we're seeing in that data as well.
Gotcha. And so, Kevin, you're coming at it now from the AI side. What drove you towards AI as solutions versus just going to something like, Power BI or those other types of tools, Tableau? Why AI as the final, or not the final, but as the current target here?
Yeah, I think to build on what Justin said is like there's just a massive data set that we have, and it's constantly evolving and changing. And then the other thing is a lot of our data sets aren't just numbers, they're text inputs from service requests and things like that. And what you're going to see is people are going to put and describe issues differently regionally around the world. And so you have this big mixture, like I said, of actual numbers and then text data, which is very important data, probably even more. And to me, there's no other way to bring those things together other than humans looking at it, which we've tried before. People like Norman on the call have played that role where you go through and look through and connect those dots. And what we're now finding is that AI, especially with some of the LLMs and other technologies that are out there, can read across those different types of data because by themselves they are structured. But when you bring them together, you're now trying to make a structured, insights out of a lot of unstructured data that is just different. And to me, the only way to do that is through some of the AI tools that have evolved. And so that is why it feels like by necessity we had to go there for this type of problem set.
Gotcha. And so, Daniel, as you think about this, right, Cummins came in, we'll talk about the relationship in a minute. Why is this an area that Axion decided is the right area for you to focus on?
Yeah, so as Justin and Kevin mentioned, the ability for a manufacturer to, release fixes and release new versions of product that are responsive to customer issues is critical to their competitiveness and how fast they can, release new technologies. And most manufacturers, they just have tons of data about customer issues, and it's not necessarily making it into that feedback loop of how that can become a part of the next release. What we're seeing is that even though there's a tremendous amount of advancement in AI and LLMs, there's a very, very big gap between all the advancements in AI and LLMs on the one hand, but progress from manufacturers on the other. There's a lot of industry-specific insights that manufacturers need. There's a precision and granularity and robustness needed to be able to trust the outputs of the AI and properly root cause an issue. And you also, in the end, need adoption from folks like field engineering, manufacturing quality, supplier quality, design, or service teams. And one can have a lot of really great AI, but if you don't have those software workflows built out that enable people to do their day-to-day job, there's nothing for them to adopt. And so, our vision is one where manufacturers are able to rapidly iterate and improve their products so that customers love their products. And we're going to, need to fill in a lot of the missing gaps in between the AI that's out there and what manufacturers actually need.
Gotcha. And so as you think about kind of, building this out, one of the challenges manufacturers deal with is, do we build it ourselves? We used to see that, right, with a lot of dashboards in the past. It was easier to build than buy. Kevin, we'll go back to you. As Cummins had to make some decisions, why did you kind of look at this and decide it made sense to go outside versus trying to build this all yourselves?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think it's always situational, right? It depends, right? It's the engineer answer to everything. But yeah, in this particular example, working with Axion, we were still in our formative stages of understanding these tools. And we saw, a partner that brought that expertise. And we know our products well, we know our customers very well. And so we're always evaluating, like, is this stretching us too far from our core? Can we learn that? Do we leverage the expertise from others? And really, you get a different perspective when you go outside and you work with partners. And I keep using the word partner because I think that's really critical. You can buy something and just get something, then use it, or you can have somebody on the other side that's selling you a product or working with you on that product that is in the weeds with you, trying to really understand what are the problems you're trying to solve and be willing to adjust and evolve based on those needs, because it's very, very hard to anticipate exactly what the solution should be from the very beginning. And there's going to be some ebbs and flows there. And Axion's represented that for us, just being a really strong partner and just understanding how do we make this work in our workflows and help with adoption and really make a meaningful impact. So yeah, that's been our approach on this one.
Gotcha. And so Justin, from your perspective, right, on the business side, where Kevin's coming at it from the technology side here, and then they have to implement, but your team is the one that actually has to go use it. How have you approached it, and how has it been adopted and accepted that Axion is a real partner coming in?
Sure, absolutely. It's gone very well, actually, and I want to give a shout out again. Norman's on the call here, and Norman smiles to think about the journey that we've been on. The adoption is like any new piece of technology. At first, you have a lot of questions, you have your skeptics, you have your champions. But I think what really changed for us is when we started to see the real results, and we started seeing our ability to detect issues, things that used to take us days or weeks to find, we were finding in hours and minutes. And our ability to then quickly respond to that customer and to quickly put a solution back in front of them really became literally a game changer for us. And so anytime you're in a competitive environment like we're in, everybody is trying to look for that competitive advantage. And this is a competitive advantage for us. And now we've got a lot of pull, and that's the great thing. We went from a very early stage of, hey, we think we've got this really cool tool, let's roll it out. People tried it, and all of a sudden now we're being overwhelmed with requests for additional use of the tool. And then, hey, it's working for warranty data. Hey, can we apply this over here with this other data set? And we try it, and yeah, it works. And so it's been a really neat just experience watching the adoption take place in front of us. And now I think it's one of those things we're probably, Daniel's probably, trying to figure out how do we prioritize all the different stuff we're throwing at him because we're coming up with so many great ideas as we use this more.
Gotcha. And so Daniel, before we get to you, I want to go back to Kevin for a second. One of the challenges when we look at the buy versus make is data security, right? And protecting data. So how did you make sure as you were looking at partners that you were prioritizing, and how were you prioritizing things like data security, data protection, protecting your customers' data as you went into this?
Yeah, that was paramount, really. And we've spent a lot of time both internally, vetting our strategy there and then working with our partners like Axion when we do engage on that. Because yeah, we want to respect all of those important, confidentialities and understand the ramifications of when data goes out our doors, what that means. And so that's just been paramount and a part of the architecture choices and also the solutions that we've gone after. And so, yeah, we could probably spend a whole hour on that one just on its own, but it's a really critical one. And I would just say that, we've approached it with care and you have to start thinking that way up front. And we've been trying to do that and keep it top of mind right from the beginning. But with these new tools and ways of working, it does evolve our way of thinking around data and how we use it and how we protect it. And so you're always like, challenging barriers and foundations. And so that's just been a part of the journey for us. But it's a big part of it, for sure.
And so I think on that note, coming back to you, Daniel, now the question we kind of chatted about in the very beginning before we let everybody else into the room is, as you think about security, are there other reasons beyond security that companies should think about working with somebody like Axion versus just going to ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or one of these other open source capability tools that are out there? Where's the real piece that somebody like Axion brings in?
Yeah, I think that there's, two big, buckets of capabilities. I think one relates to getting users to adopt in their workflows, and the second is more specialized AI algorithms that are needed to make this work in manufacturing. On the first, ultimately, if you're on the quality team or engineering or manufacturing, you're trying to detect, investigate, and root cause an issue, you need workflows that can help you do that. You need, one workflow where you can understand what are the new issues, another one where you can scope the issue, another one where you can then investigate and see different data sets and maybe even collaborate with colleagues to see, where the issue is occurring. Is this just a hot, something happening in hot climates or not? And once you know what the root cause is, you need to be able to specify the scope of the issue so that if you are then doing, planning any sort of remediation action, which units need to be fixed. And so all of these are different workflows that people need to do. They have different data that's present to them. There's different features that they need. I mean, we're deluged constantly with literally thousands of feature requests about these workflows. So I think the workflows are quite important. And then the second bucket really has to do with algorithms. I think that, most, AI that's out there, it doesn't do the job that's needed in terms of understanding the way products work, their components, their failure modes. And it's actually not because the AI is not good enough. It's actually because the expertise is in the mind of the human. And so you actually need to build a human in the loop system where humans can take their knowledge of products and failures and help create that digital twin of the failures that are in the field. And when you do that, and you have the right algorithms, you can then detect when there's a new failure that really matches, the failures that are arising, whether it's in fault codes in IoT or in what technicians are seeing in the hands of customers.
So one of the things you just brought up, and that's really helpful when you mentioned things like digital twin, that it's really bringing that human into the conversation, into the loop. And maybe I'll just kind of throw the question out. Maybe we'll start with Justin. Is beyond looking at and finding what you know, right? So finding what you know faster and more effectively. Are you starting to find things that you didn't know? And is the AI starting to actually help the humans think about, well, I never thought of it that way? And are you starting to see use cases beyond the traditional use cases?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you described it well. There's that first step of let's take all this data that we're using today and just do it faster, right? And I think that's been a huge unlock for us. our engineers and our quality teams are actually spending time making decisions based on the data versus trying to crunch and organize the data. But then as we started to get into that, we realized we can start asking different questions about the data set. And so we can start to look at, instead of all the historical things we've looked at in the past, every time we've had this issue, it's always been this cause. We've been able to take a step out and say, are there other patterns that we wouldn't even think about looking for? And we can ask the AI tool to go and query the data. And what we found has been some really interesting things where we found a completely different pattern than what we were expecting, and it allowed us to then go try and address the problem in an entirely different way. And so, a simple thing might be, hey, this piece keeps breaking on the engine, so let's go replace it with a stronger piece. Well, actually, the reason that piece is breaking is something entirely different than what we thought, and let's go fix that other issue that's going on. Maybe it's not even with the engine itself. Maybe there's a problem on the truck that we need to go work with our OEM partner on and fix that problem, and now this other problem goes away. So it's really been interesting, and I step back and I say, I think that's where, again, the value of the human in the loop comes back into play. The human being is still the one that's going to make decisions based on that data, and because they're able to step back and not just have to crunch the data, they can look at it. Now they can make better decisions, they can ask better questions, and hopefully get to a much better resolution to the issue.
Gotcha. And so to kind of follow up on some of the examples you just gave, one of the challenges, one of the questions we often hear is, this is expensive, right? Anytime we do a new AI or data solution, it costs money. And how are you justifying the ROI? And was it a fight up front? It sounds like now you have some good use cases and good ROI. What was that journey of the ROI, and how hard was it to get the original support versus where you are now, where you can't get enough help, right?
Yeah, it's a real challenge, right? And anybody that's in a business that's a for-profit entity knows that part of the challenge is you're trying to manage your budget. And early on, I had to put my neck out. I had to take a little bit of risk here and say, I think this is an important enough thing that I'm going to invest some of my budget into this. Within the first year, we were able to find, at least a tenfold return on that investment. It was a small initial investment. And we continue to see similar returns there, where I won't tell you what we're spending with Daniel, but we're saving millions of dollars a year right now based on what we're able to do with Axion. And I think that number is just going to continue to grow as we get smarter about how to use the tool. And really, I think that's the benefit of technology. To do the same level of work, to get to those same amount of insights through the traditional methods with older tools or with just adding more people to it, we would spend an order of magnitude more money trying to do this manually than if we tried to do it with this technology. So the return on investment is there, and it's a question of, again, how fast and what else do we want to do, and how do we do that in a structured manner, because the returns are that great.
Gotcha. And so Daniel, great soundbite for you guys, right? That, hey, it's working and the returns are there. How are you seeing this across other industries? Is what Cummins is seeing unique, or is this kind of common what you're seeing across multiple industries?
Yeah, I think that when we look at our customers across industries, I think the commonality is that people are using the platform to detect, investigate root cause, and solve issues that are impacting their customers. I think in some industries we're seeing more and more usage by folks, once you know what the failures are in the hands of customers, to also inform the strategy of what are the products that you're going to release next, and really start thinking across the entire life cycle. So, for example, in consumer electronics businesses, where the product life cycle can be actually shorter than in aerospace, it's always a question of what are the top issues that we're seeing, both on their own products but also on competitors. And what are the features that are and failures that are driving the biggest impact to things like star rating, NPS, or customer satisfaction. And so I think that availability in the case of Cummins is obviously very top of mind. In all industries, things like reducing warranty costs is top of mind. But then thinking constantly about the product iteration is something that we see, especially for products that don't have a super long development life cycle.
Gotcha. And so let's talk, I guess, a little bit about the implementation. You talked about, consumer goods versus aerospace. Justin, you talked about, you're rolling out more and more capabilities. It didn't happen overnight. So what was the implementation like, and how did you start this? And maybe, Kevin, we'll start with you. Once you decided to go with Axion, how was that journey? Was it a multi-year journey before you were able to see the first results? How did you approach this?
Yeah, we talked about this recently, right? It's yeah, it was a multi-year journey. And what I liked about what Justin said is in the beginning, we at Cummins, we're trying to find the right intersection because you can take AI to a lot of things, right? And the tendency is like I can throw this tool at many, many problems. How do we choose? And we've been very intentional about the intersection of real business impact and customer impact, and then the feasibility of these tools and the value they can add, right? And so we've been trying to find that sweet spot, and we were intentional about that up front with Axion. And we just scoped it out appropriately to where, like Justin said, hey, we can take this much on this year and then see if we can get the fruits from it. And then, like what we like to say, is earn the right to keep going, right? We don't want to go all in from the very beginning. We want to earn that right, but again, target that sweet spot. And so that's been our journey. It's really our method of applying these tools because, again, the tendency is like, let's take it everywhere. And it's in theory, you might be able to, but let's go find the sweet spot where our customers feel it and where we feel it. And then you got to be patient, right? It does take a little bit of time to get the initial tool up and running. And then what you're going to find is your customers learn a lot, and we learn a lot about how to apply it. But then you get this flywheel going. And it was something Justin and I and Norman were reflecting on this week is we're kind of starting to see this exponential growth and benefit to this tool set because that flywheel is now going. We're adding more incremental data sets. You've got it embedded in your workflows, and now you're really seeing more and more fruits all the time. So starts with patience, but then if you do it right, you can get this flywheel going, and it's almost just driving itself. The value is just very, very apparent.
That's fantastic. So two things you mentioned that I just want to follow up on. One is you talked about adding more and more data sets. One thing we heard at Rethink this summer, our summer event, and we've heard on other calls, is that we've collected data with the intention of using them for dashboards and Excel and tools like that. And when we now need to use that same data for AI, it's not quite plug and play. And how did you have to rethink your data collection to make sure it was
Yeah.
AI ready? And how did you go through that journey?
Yeah, I mean, we're still on that journey, Stephen, to be honest with you. We're still learning there. Fortunately, some of these tools make up for that unstructuredness to your data and the messiness of it, which is good. But yeah, I mean, it's driving, like we've been saying, is every data set that we get, both in our production and our validation and design, and then in the field, we got to start viewing that as potential gold for future decisions. And I liked what Daniel said earlier is like, how do we leverage, and this is the journey we're on, all this data and insights that we're getting from tools like Axion, how is it coming back to inform the way we design our next products and the way we validate our next products? But it starts with recognizing what are these key data sets, understanding their status, right? Like just how clean they are, how organized they are. And then, again, it's kind of a barrier to acceleration, but you got to go get structure around that data. And so we've been slowing down and saying, what does this data need to look like? How do we harvest? How do we store it differently so that then we can tap into it with AI? But yeah, that's a part of the journey. But fortunately, some of these tools will help you make up for that, but it still doesn't steal away from like, we need to have more intentionality when you take data, when you store data, where are you storing it and what does it look like? And everybody's a part of that. But it comes back to we've got to start seeing the value in every bit of data that's there. And that's been a part of our culture evolution over the past many years.
Gotcha. And so Daniel, I see you smiling a little bit. So as you've kind of seen what Cummins is doing and other companies, how critical it is, and how does Axion work to make sure companies understand the importance of collecting data the right way to take advantage of it?
I think that, I think it's an interesting thing. I mean, I think that for most companies, they actually have a tremendous amount of data that's very untapped.
Right.
Sometimes when we start working with people, they'll say, oh, I don't know the state of my data. And if they were using, BI, that would be true because you kind of need to go structure your data. But actually, when it comes to a lot of the unstructured data sets that are coming about customer issues, manufacturers actually have a ton of this data already, and AI can leverage it. I think that the reason the company is called Axion is, Axion are the dark matter particles of the universe that, now we can observe. And actually, manufacturers just have treasure troves of this unstructured quality data. I mean, things can always be taken to the next level, as Kevin's saying, but there's usually a tremendous amount of opportunity.
Gotcha. So I guess my last question before we get into kind of the change management and how you actually got people on board is maybe for Justin, and this is something that Kevin, you had mentioned. When you look at your data, right, you're starting to not only have yourselves look at the data, but OEMs that you work with, right, that are maybe building some subcomponents for you. Your customers are looking at that data. So as you think of the AI solutions you're bringing in, is it really just for you, or how do you kind of share these solutions with your customers as well and your partners?
Yeah, absolutely. It's fantastic. And I was thinking about that too. And when we were talking about the return on investment, it's easy for a company to always kind of look within its four walls and say, what's best for us? So how do we help maximize value for Cummins? How do we save the most money? And I think where we've been successful is we've said, how do we help our customers achieve the jobs that they want to achieve, right? So how do we keep that mine operating efficiently? And so we've been working with one of our OEM equipment partners with this to say, hey, we think that if we actually use not just Cummins data, but we use data off the machine, we think that we can have an even bigger impact on machine availability, right? We can see what the truck is doing. We can understand some of the other things. And was recently in a major quality conference down in Peru with several of our customers and end users, and they started talking about it before I even did, which was great, right? Like that's the kind of impact that it's having. And I think when we partner with Axion and we partner with the OEMs and we say, how do we go solve this problem together? We bring a little bit of the best of everybody and we say, let's go do that. That then creates pull from your end customer, right? And at the end of the day, that becomes a differentiator for you in the marketplace. And so it's really been gratifying to have customers asking for us to do more of this for them, and in fact are asking, like, how do we maybe start thinking about that? I don't know, Daniel, if you've gotten any direct contact yet with a few of our OEMs, but I know that there's been several conversations I've been in where they've been saying, hey, we might actually try to use that to solve this other problem we've got in our business as well.
All right, excellent. This is great. So one of the things is it's great your customers are pulling. You're starting to see that pull. You had to still get your employees to do it, right? Norman, we might pull you into this conversation as well since you're on the call. How did you get your employees to say we're going to change how you do things? And so maybe Justin, we'll start with you again. Is how did you start that initial conversation around we're going to do something different, and here's what it is, and here's what we need from you.
That's right. That's right. Well, I think, humans by default generally are resistant to change, right? It's probably a survival instinct that goes back, thousands of years. And so when we first started talking about this within Cummins, there were some people that were resistant to it. We heard all the usual things. Well, is this going to make my job obsolete? Is this going to mean that no longer, am I going to be able to do these things that I like to do? And I think this is where having a change champion like Norman, who could go out and say, hey, this isn't just leadership pushing me up the latest flavor of the day down at you. This is how this has fundamentally impacted my job. This is how this has made me more efficient. This is how it's helped me make better, higher quality decisions. This is how it's helped me not have to stay up all night trying to get that last piece of data crunch before this customer's meeting tomorrow that I've got to go to, right? And so I think seeing that has helped folks realize that there is benefit to them, and if there's value to them, if we always talk about the WIFM, the what's in it for me, right? When they see that there's something in it for them that's going to make their job better or their quality of life better, then they jump on it pretty quick. Now, it's not been universal, right? There's still the people that will resist change, but that's very natural and normal. So, Norman, that might be a great opportunity for you to kind of talk a little bit about your journey and how how you've been championing this for us.
Yeah, sure. If you don't mind, I'll step in right here. But
Please.
one of the great things about this tool is that it has somewhat grown organically. So when you have a champion, someone that's training and mentoring people in the use of the tool, one of the things that we were very intentional in not mandating the use of the tool for certain workflows. Rather, we gave it as an option, as an alternative to their standard approach. And you have some people that really pick it up and they start seeing the benefits and efficiencies. A lot of engineers would contact me and say, hey, I did my work. It took me 2 weeks and I just repeated that same exercise with the tool and it took me an hour. And they just immediately saw that benefit. And just through sheer word of mouth and sharing the value stories, sharing the successes that we've had, more and more engineers are asking for access, and it becomes the new norm, right? Now it's become embedded organically into some workflows. And now we can start thinking more deliberately about embedding it officially in workflows and making it the official tool. But I think early on, people were always conscious that AI is probably, it's something that's new. And we gave them the opportunity to use it and give them the option. And, over time, with a little bit of patience, they started comparing the results, and they made that switch themselves, which was great.
And so that's great to hear. And I think excuse me, your role as a champion is critical when we talk about change management. How are you driving those word of mouth conversations? Do you have internal kind of a knowledge sharing that you do? Is it a monthly meeting where people have a chance to share stories, or is it just kind of true word of mouth?
Yeah, it is a combination of both. Axion have been a great partner. They've been involved in weekly and monthly meetings that we set up to train entire teams, entire groups and business units. And we do follow-ups on a monthly basis, in some cases a weekly basis, depending on the criticality of the project. So it's really about making yourself available and engaging proactively and being there. There's weeks and there's months where people don't engage as much, right? But just always being available. When the right problem comes along and the solution is right there for them, it will click and they'll see the value. But it's just, it's been constantly available for maybe the past 2 years. It's been a long journey, but it's paying off.
That's excellent. So I want to go back to Kevin for a second on this. One of the things that we hear as well, I'll go back to the security question, is once you make things available and people want to use it more and more, you still have to control how they're using it, how they're controlling the data. And so if you looked at it, in the IT and OT side have looked at things, how do you manage that, trying to make it fully available, but also protecting? How do you manage that balance?
Yeah, I mean, it is a delicate balance, and it kind of, like I said earlier, challenges the paradigms of before, and we do that in a safe and responsible way. But I think there's just a lot of power that comes from democratizing this data, and I think a lot of companies may have been a little bit too worried about the security there, and we're not taking major risks, but we're taking more risks with these tools, but doing it in a smart way. But I think it really comes back to people are working in an interface, right? Where yes, the data is there, but the interface controls like what they can get to and how they get to it and all that. And so there's not a ton of risk there in my mind. It's just giving them, information they need to do their jobs, right? And so again, a lot of efforts have been put in on where the data is, who has access to it. But I think this custom front end that we utilize, right, with Axion's help is really the bigger enabler where you're just getting the right data in the right form to do your job. So hopefully that answers the question there.
Yep,
So,
no, that certainly helps. And so one thing that both I think everybody's talked about is you're starting to add more and more workflows and more use cases. How are you within Cummins prioritizing kind of what comes next? And then to Daniel, how are you guys prioritizing how to help? So maybe, I know, Justin, if you want to take that of how you're starting to prioritize all the opportunities you have.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those good problems to be solving now, right? Where we're saying, hey, we've got all these different opportunities. And I think for us, what it comes back to is there value for the customer and is there value for the business? And when you get those two things together, you've got something that you can prioritize. And so we're very much looking at that. We actually, I think a couple of weeks ago, Daniel and Adam were in and we were going through the whole laundry list of things. We're like, yeah, that sounds like a really good idea. That's going to be a lot of fun for somebody to go off, but we're not going to see immediate value, or it's really not going to make any meaningful change to one of our customers' KPIs. So let's deprioritize that. But this one down here, actually, we think could jump to the head of the line, because now that we know what we know about these other data sets, that might help this other decision-making process go even faster. And so we're always trying to make sure that we're balancing that value to the customer and the value to the business.
Is all right. I'll add a few more bars
Yeah,
there to
please.
just support what Justin's saying. We've been putting a lot of work in with our leadership team and aligning it to our overall strategy as a business to say, what are the key ways that we can differentiate, and then pointing AI at that, right? Because again, like Justin was saying, there's infinite number of things we can do. And our strategy is to be very intentional about how we feel like we're going to differentiate for our customers and aiming our AI use cases there and our energies. Because we have finite resources and time, right, to implement these things. And this has been one of those examples where the stars aligned, right? We had the right problem for our customers and for us, and the right solution. And but yeah, again, I think companies are going to have this tendency, like there's going to be a million use cases you can do that are really fun, but and impactful to some extent. But will you be able to quantify it at a top line benefit, right, for the company? And that's where we've been trying to be very, very intentional and get alignment with our leaders so that they know what they should expect up front.
If I could just follow up on the comment around leadership. One of the things, again, I'll just go anecdotally, that we've heard is, leaders in the C-suite or the business unit leaders hear about ChatGPT and, well, what are we doing about AI, right? So that question, it's a very generic question. How have you been able to educate your leadership team so that they're helping to ask the right questions that you just talked about, Kevin, versus asking, more generic and not really understanding what's possible? So how have you educated your leadership? And I don't know, Justin, if you want to tackle that one, maybe on the education piece.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that question gets asked a lot, is what are we doing about AI? And that's a question that's got so many different little threads that you can pull. We've done it in a couple of ways. One is that we, as part of our corporate chief technical officer, his corporate office has basically a work group that's dedicated to how we're using AI. We started off with that, and we started to talk about our use cases. We would have a quarterly tech leaders conference, and we'd spend time, and that was sort of within that technical and quality function. I think as we started to see that value, then it became bigger than just the technical function. Now our chief information officer is saying, hey, this is a big enough deal at the enterprise level. Let's start bringing in people from all these different parts of the business. And so there's a regular symposium there where we're working, showing our use cases, showing the value that we've had, talking about risks, talking about opportunities. And I think that helps answer some of that questions about, well, what are we doing about AI? Well, we've already been doing a lot with AI. And this is the differentiator opportunity that Kevin talked about, to say this is where we think Cummins can take this technology and use it for our advantage or for our customers' value. So that's definitely front of mind for us as business leaders and for our C-suite as well.
Gotcha. And so maybe, Daniel, as you look towards what Cummins has done, maybe as a great example of education, how are others doing that? And where do you see opportunities to, especially maybe companies that are just starting out, to better educate the leadership team on what's possible?
Yeah, I think something that's really, really exceptional about Cummins is how they see, the quality of their products, and their focus on being customer centric as really critical to the, success of their business. Nobody ever questions kind of the importance of quality and availability for their customers. And I think that there's really, we started with some quick wins with clear ROI, but then transitioned to, what is the company's strategy and how do we align all of the activities, all the, 100 ideas that we have about what we could do, so that we're really addressing the key strategic initiatives that the executive leadership is already thinking about. And I think as a result of that, increasingly, customer quality and CX are able to be seen, as a strategic advantage. And it's not just about solving one issue, but it's about how this can inform, the way that planned maintenance happens, or that product strategy happens, or that key relationships with customers are managed. And so I think that where we see some failure modes with other customers, or others in the industry, is where quality is just seen as some cost center. It's disconnected from the company's strategy. Customer issues don't really flow back and inform product strategy or a lot of the other activities. And so I think that the more that and so obviously, like, it's great when executives can understand the criticality of quality and how much customers value it. But I think it's also something that we're seeing being important as a part of the leadership of CX and quality to communicate to the executives, is how this work fits in with their strategic initiatives. And so that's something that I always advise the CX and quality leaders that we collaborate with, is to always be aware of what strategic initiatives are happening at the C-suite, and help connect the dots with the work that's going on the day-to-day.
Gotcha. Excuse me. That leads us to a question that just popped up from Andrew in the chat here. You talked about the quick wins and the ROI, and Justin, you've talked about that as well. I think beyond the buckets that you've just mentioned, right, of CX and quality, what other kind of quick wins should companies be looking at as they start on this journey? And either Daniel or maybe Justin, kind of, as you guys picked, what were those initial quick wins that you were able to identify?
Yeah, I think definitely those initial quick wins were just looking at the speed at which we could detect an issue in the field. And we would regularly, as part of our interaction with our customers, we do customer experience surveys. We would do, your usual net promoter scores. And one of the first things that we realized was that we were relying on a very antiquated method for them to tell us they had a product problem. Right. And so the analogy I use is, think about the IT help desk, and hopefully they're not making any of the IT people nervous by saying this, but our interface with the IT help desk is usually, I can't get this thing to work. And so I put in a help ticket, and it used to be you kind of literally talk to a real IT person. That person couldn't fix it. You went to the next level. That was the same thing. That was the same model that we were doing at Cummins. Is my truck's not running. We'd send a technician out to it. That technician would use their experience, whatever tools they had, they would try to fix it. That escalation of that issue would take months sometimes. And customers were getting frustrated and saying, my truck's been down, and I gotta get it back to work. And so using the AI tools to say, how do we go and we look at that data, and that quick win was, what used to take us months to detect, we were detecting in a matter of days. And so now the customer's like, great, you're being a lot more responsive to me. You're actually hearing what I'm saying. I feel like I'm shouting it from the rooftops. And it wasn't that we weren't listening, but it was that message just wasn't making it to the right people. And that was a huge unlock for us. So that was an early win. And then I think we started to say, okay, what other processes do we have that are very manual and very serial, where data has to be input in one database and somebody has to pick it up and then they have to give it to another person. And we started to realize that there was just huge inefficiencies there, and that inefficiencies were costing our customers in terms of downtime or warranty or whatever, but it was costing us in terms of just wasted resources. Right? We had so many people to just pass the data around, not actually making decisions on the data. And so again, that's where Kevin was talking about. We're pointing AI at those processes that we look at and go, there's got to be a more efficient way. There's got to be a way to differentiate ourselves. And again, it started out in that kind of customer quality space, but we're now starting to look at it internally of just approval process flows, and how do we make sure that as we're manufacturing the product, we're documenting certain things. So it's definitely opened up a lot of different options to us in terms of where we think other wins could come from.
Gotcha. And I think the other thing you had mentioned earlier as well is there's a big piece on the time savings and things being more efficient, but it's also new insights, right? It's the ability to get to insights and potentially new insights, and as Daniel, you mentioned, new products that maybe you couldn't have gone to before. So with that said, we have about 10 minutes here. So again, if folks have more questions, please pop them in. Before we get to final words, what does the future look like? but also what does the past look like? So Justin, we'll start with you, and then kind of go through the roundtable.
Yeah.
What do you see coming with Axion, but also what do you wish you would have done differently early on as companies think about these partnerships?
Yeah, it's a good question, and the old proverb holds true. Hindsight's always 20/20, right? I think if we could rewind the clock even just a couple of years, right? We have taken what we've called kind of a crawl, walk, run approach. I think I would have liked to have gone faster into the walk stage. We crawled for quite a while, and I think part of that was just us getting comfortable with using a different mindset altogether. Some of it was just the development of the relationship with our partner Axion. But I think that if I could give any advice to anybody that's just at that very starting point of their journey, don't be afraid to go faster than you're comfortable with, because that's actually going to probably stretch you and cause you to ask some questions that you wouldn't otherwise ask. So certainly accelerate that. I think what the future looks like is really, again, looking at those processes that are data rich, but that are very labor intensive or infrastructure intensive, or even if it's not labor intensive, it's time consuming for all the information to get pulled together, and looking at how we can use the AI tool sets to help make us more efficient. Because at the end of the day, we want our best people using their brain power to make decisions. And that's, if that's on the technical side, if that's on the business side, if that's on the manufacturing side, is really trying to get information in a structured format in front of those people so that they can use it to make decisions, and not spend their time just crunching the numbers.
Gotcha. And Kevin, we'll kind of go to you on that one. As you look ahead on the roadmap, what do you see coming next?
Yeah, I mean, in particular to maybe what we're doing with Axion, like we said earlier, I like Daniel's use of the word workflow, right? These tools have to be embedded in workflows, and maybe they facilitate the workflow of the past, right? And so what we're doing is further embedding tools like Axion into our critical workflows. Today we've been using it on our products in the field, but like I said earlier, we're going to be utilizing those data sets and this technology to influence our upfront design and requirements decisions that we're making, and also validate our products differently because of the insights that we're getting from these tools. But our mission in general is to start looking at end-to-end processes that are critical for us, and not just say, where can I add one AI agent or one data analytics tool, but really evolve that whole workflow end to end and change the way we work, right? I think that's really the opportunity here, is you can sprinkle these things in, or you can evolve, right? And not just evolving for to evolve, but doing it with intentionality to deliver value that these tools bring. And so we're trying to go from a very small use case view to large scale workflow evolution in our AR journey. Yep.
And I would say a lot of manufacturers can relate, who've been through the lean manufacturing journey. You started with lean projects and eventually you got to lean thinking and really changing how you behaved. And you're starting to see that same journey here.
Yep.
So we have two questions in the chat, but Daniel, before I get to them, for you, as you look at companies and you look at the relationship with Cummins, what signals do you look at to know that a company is really ready versus just kind of asking, what should I do? How do you know that they're really ready to partner?
I think that, the stronger a company's problem-solving processes and the more customer-centric they are, the better they're going to be able to adopt, a software with AI that supports that. In the end, some companies have very fast problem-solving cycles and they're very customer-centric. On the other hand, other companies, maybe they're a little bit newer to how to do problem solving, a little bit newer to how to do root causing and countermeasure. I think what is interesting though is that a very big part of the way we operate is we always create a digital footprint of how the teams are using the platform. And you might have some teams that are able to adopt it really well, and maybe there's another team that's not. What's great about leveraging software for this is that you can get that X-ray visibility and understand what parts of your organization have a slower problem-solving cycle. Yeah. And that's something that actually is only possible with AI. And the reason is that really a problem-solving cycle should be defined as from the time you have the earliest warning signals emerge until you put the countermeasure in place and it's truly effective. And you actually generally can't see that without AI because you don't know when the earliest warning signals emerged. And so, in the platform, we're able to see which teams adopt this really well and which ones don't. And I think this helps leaders give a lot more targeted guidance to the teams that do not have as fast problem-solving cycles.
Gotcha. So one question that came up in the chat that kind of builds off this, I'm going to probably put it to you, Kevin, is as you looked at finding a partner, how did you go through and decide Axion? Maybe you don't have to go through the whole process, but did you evaluate multiple potential partners before you settled on Axion? And how do you kind of think through finding the right partner?
Yeah, so the decision on Axion actually predated me. Norman could give you the history there, and I think there might be some others on the call that were involved in it. But yeah, I mean, why Axion? I think we were searching in this space. How do we find efficiencies and effectiveness? Axion was just at the right place, right time, right? I do think we then looked internally, like we said earlier, could we do this at scale and at pace to where we could deliver something to our customers? And we reached out to others, and we always do these comparison matrices of all of our options and just weigh that out. And ultimately, you're taking a risk, right? But like I went at earlier, is like, how does that potential partner show up? Are they showing up as a partner, or are they showing up as, hey, I can give you this thing, and then I'll support you just when you need it? And again, what we found with Axion as a partner, where it's like, hey, I joke with the team about it. When they show up on our site, it's like they want to solve our problems like in that moment. We're whiteboarding. When you see that, that means something, and that's what we look for. Because that's how we like to solve problems at Cummins, right? Is like, let's get everybody in a room and let's just have collective ownership of solving that, and we look for that in our partners.
Gotcha. I think you keep using the word partner, which is, I think, an important piece as well. Mike, if you want to follow up on that question to learn more, Kevin, Justin, the team would be happy to follow up offline, and feel free to reach out to the NAM team and we'll connect you with them. The last question that came up is early on, Kevin, you talked about there's a lot of data which is unstructured, a lot of text fields. How effective is it, and how do you and is it getting better to make sense of all of that data, especially you have data potentially across the globe, so that text data isn't in just one language either. How is that working, and is that an area that is continuing to improve, or do you see opportunities there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm blown away by the capability all the time, right? It's extremely impressive, and just a metric, like we're seeing like a 98% accuracy on categorizing, unstructured text and then linking that to fail codes. Because like the person in the field doesn't exactly write exactly what you want to see to link it to a fail code. And these tools have been able to help us create that linkage where when we go back with our experts and say, was this right? 98% of the time it is. And so just incredible based on if you give it enough context, right, and you give it enough data, it can make sense of it. So we're continuously impressed. I oftentimes just say you should assume it will be capable and you should go try and see what happens. So yeah, pretty amazing on what these tools have been able to do and how Axion's been able to then implement them for us.
Fantastic. Well, we're just about out of time, so I'm going to give 30 seconds to Cummins and to Axion. So Justin, 30-second kind of final thoughts.
Yeah, final thoughts here. Axion and AI, it's a tool. It's not a solution in and of itself. And so the analogy that I like to use with my folks is think about the calculator. You still have to know how to do math to use a calculator. The calculator allows you to go faster and be more accurate with that math. So think about AI as that same type of a tool set.
Gotcha. Daniel, final word?
Yeah, no, we're just really excited that, what we've seen over the last, couple of years is that with the explosion of data quality, folks on quality and CX teams are just spending their whole day reading text. And so, for us, it's just really encouraging to see that, with more AI and automation, we can have quality teams focus much more on solving problems for customers, which I think is what quality and CX used to be about.
All right, excellent. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We will get you a copy of this recording. And as I said earlier, if you have any follow-up questions, please reach out to myself or the NAM team, and we'll get them to the right people. And look forward to talking to you all soon. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks all.